Hello, I'm Tyler Wilson. I'm a programmer at Film at Lincoln Center, and I'm here with my colleagues from the Museum of Modern Art and fellow members of the New Director New Films Selection Committee, La Francis Hui, Associate Curator at MoMA, the co-chair of this year's committee, and Chief Curator of Film at MoMA, Rajendra Roy. Hi, La, Raj. Thanks for having me. Hey. Today we're going to be talking about some of the films in this year's edition of New Directors New Films, which begins April 20th and runs through May 1st. This is the 51st edition of this festival, a year past its Golden Jubilee, but this year's no less special, I think. As many of you listening may already know, New Directors is an annual festival co-presented by Film at Lincoln Center in the Museum of Modern Art, which aims to introduce and celebrate emerging filmmakers who we feel are working at the vanguard of cinema. These are, I think, filmmakers who we feel are imaginative and daring in how they approach the craft. And I think in many ways anticipate the direction cinema is heading. Also, I think this is a festival for any of you out there who are just willing to take a chance on a film or a filmmaker you may not know too much about yet. I think this is definitely a festival for the curious film goer who might be looking for a next favorite director. It's always one of my favorite festivals, as has been even before I joined Film at Lincoln Center. So I'm looking forward to chatting with you two about this year's lineup. Before we maybe get to the specifics, I'll just add that this year's festival includes 26 features, 2 shorts programs of 11 shorts, each of which will screen at theaters at FLC and MoMA, with many of the directors appearing in person today. So happy to say that this year. Of course, for more info on the lineup, the schedule, tickets, etc., you can visit our website at filmlink.org. Okay, so with that, we could maybe just get to the films themselves. I mean, unless Raj, you have some general notes or reflections about this year's edition that you want to point out?
Well, as you mentioned, this is the 51st New Directors. It was actually founded in 72, which makes it 50 years old. And, you know, with festivals, you count the first edition as one, right? So New Directors was founded in 1972, and I was founded in 1972. So I turned 50 this year, and it's the 50th anniversary. So somehow it's a really old festival, and this is a really old programmer. So that's my intro note.
But we are always like young at heart.
No, it's true. And you said this is a festival for people who love discovery. It's also a festival where people love bragging rights, right? So anybody that was here 5 years ago at New Directors would have known the name Hamaguchi and would have had bragging rights for all the people who are like, who is this guy who's nominated for 4 Oscars and ends up winning for the second time for Japan Best International Film? And this is a place where you can see things first and filmmakers first, for sure. And La has his phone number if you ever want to call him. So.
Okay, we'll post that at the end. Okay, so well, I guess maybe a good place to start would be at the beginning with maybe this year's opening night film, Hacking, directed by Audrey Dewan.
I think I'm really excited that this year we're presenting 39 directors, and 21 of them are women. It's the first time in our festival's history that we have a women majority, and we are opening and closing with films by women. And let's talk about the opening film.
Yeah, I think this is that many people are excited about. Since its premiere in Venice last year, where it won the Golden Lion. And I think its enthusiasm has been, rightfully sustained since then. The lead actress, Anna Maria Bartolome, just picked up a César for her performance in the film, which is absolutely incredible. I think when you see this film, you'll clearly see she's a promising actor that I expect we'll see much more of in the future. But yeah, I don't know. Does anyone want to talk more about what the film is?
This film is set in 1960s France, and it's about this young woman who is trying to race against time to get an abortion, which was a procedure that's illegal at that time. And it is kind of interesting to look at this film now, like as if time has not changed. I mean, we're still dealing with this problem. And so there's a timeless quality to this film. And I like the way it's shot and it's made. It's like watching a thriller, or fear, and it's like you're really in the moment with this character all the time.
100%. And it's interesting for all of us who were able to experience this back in September in Venice. We've been anticipating its arrival here in the States, and I think Bong Joon-ho was the president of the jury in Venice, and his colleagues on the jury knew that this would resonate far beyond Europe, and most particularly in the U.S., given the rollbacks in access to healthcare that's happening here in the States. But I don't think any of us knew exactly how much more relevant it would be now, even more so than September, alas. And so I do think this is an incredible opportunity to launch a film into the public consciousness in the US at a time when its urgency, unfortunately, could not be more spot on, actually. And know that they can both be here for the opening night to speak about the film and to celebrate in their incredible accomplishment.
Anna Maria's an incredible performance. Speaking of incredible, I think performances in general, maybe we can turn very different kind of portrait of a young lady with The African Desperate from Mark Sims, which is our closing selection. Martine Sims is an LA-based artist, I think, whose work has been multiple forms, from film and video to photography and publishing. I think even presenting lectures. So she's clearly a restless artist, and I think this film is pretty illustrative. How cleverly she dismisses these boundaries of artistic disciplines, and it's also a film that shows how naturally experimental and a narrative film is capable of feeling, I think. But the film, I guess I'll say more what the film is about, but it concerns an MFA graduate played by an artist in her own right. Diamond Stingley is, I think, absolutely incredible in this film. She's a total star. But it follows her on her final day at I think an unnamed in upstate New York, but maybe we can put two and two together. And it follows her over the course of a day before she heads back home to Chicago. It's actually the day she I guess graduates or receives her master's. And so the film is a kind of like 24-hour hangout movie that but I think it's just it's certainly much more than that. I think it's packed with so many ideas, and I think raises some very sharp questions about the art world and its sort of uneasy relationship with academia, how race and relationships are navigated in these spaces, like I already alluded to, I think these ideas are animated by such an inventiveness that Sims takes on with the sound and with the image. She's drawing on everything from video art to making fun of like sort of the deadpan nature, or the of text messaging and FaceTime video calls to sampling, and I think also she cleverly references various coming of age films and college movie tropes. I think this film is so quick-witted and funny, creative, so entertaining. I think it'll be a great way to close the festival this year.
We saw this film. I'm sure La and I both recognize that we, in a way, couldn't turn away. Martine is an artist the museum has featured our galleries, actually, so we have a relationship with her. But its indictment of the art world was something that was like a mirror being held in front of us. And it is hilarious, right? Truly, truly, even if you aren't the butt of the jokes, which I feel like many of us who occupy space in the art world can sense that she's holding that mirror up to us. It's a comic tour de force. And yeah, Diamond is definitely, I mean, a deadpan delivery that, rivals greatest comedians in the world. So no, we're really looking forward to having that film anchor the festival.
When we can make fun of ourselves.
Exactly.
So what are some of your favorite films in the festival? Or I mean, we love all these films. I mean, we are on the selection committee. A lot of these filmmakers, like people really don't know anything about. And so it really is our job to champion for them, sure that people don't forget about these films.
I'm happy to quickly mention two films that I am particularly proud that are part of the festival. But though, as you say, we don't have favorites amongst the programmers. One is a German film by Annika Pinsky. It's called Talking About the Weather. And it really does kind of capture the moment that we live in. And the title gives it away. It's like, what do we do? How do we interact with people after, a time when neuroses is kind of like infected every element of our life? It's a story of a relatively young academic woman and her relationships in the field, with a particularly sweet little cameo by a regular of the contemporary German movement known as the Berlin School. Keep an eye out for that. But really is a very of our time zeitgeist film that I encourage people to check out. Another title that kind of gives away a little bit of its ambition is Once Upon a Time in Calcutta, which is obviously referencing many other films, several other films in cinema history that have used the Once Upon a Time in a place. And its ambitions are no less than Sergio Leone, I would say, in some ways, transplanting this kind of huge sprawling tale onto a contemporary Calcutta or Kolkata with the kind of nostalgic spelling of the city, centering on a woman who is involved with a very contemporary medium, which is live television hosting, and the kind of corrupt dealings of the city government around her, her family, the tragedies that happen in this world, and just really refreshing for me to see this kind of ambitious epic storytelling coming out of the region. Tyler, do you have some faves?
Sure. Well, on that note of a story about people hustling, but I think a film that is much more an exercise in economy in many ways is a film from Korea, Hot and Day, Cold at Night, directed by Park Sung-yeol, who not only directed the film, but he co-wrote, starred, edited, and produced it with his partner Kwon Cheong-ra, who also is playing his partner in the film. And Hot and Day screened, I think, most recently in Berlin. It's a narrative film that follows these two as a couple struggling to keep financially afloat. They're working dead-end jobs. They're trying to, keep up with appearances among family and friends, some of whom very much take advantage of them in very funny ways. I think this film, as I mentioned, is essentially made with a two-person crew. It takes I think a pretty unfussy approach to its aesthetic, but it's just a very well written story. These are filmmakers clearly with something to say about contemporary city living, the gig and the renting economy, and I think it does so with like such a quality and rare sense of humor. I hope it finds an audience in the festival, because it definitely deserves everyone's attention while it's in New York and while Park is here.
And I think that this film, a lot of New Yorkers can identify with it. It's like people hustling and trying to make ends meet, and the circumstances this couple's in. I think a lot of us have actually experienced that. It's filled with humor, and I think it's a wonderful work, and it really is part of this Korean cinema that does a really, really great job in recent years, revealing inequality and individual struggles behind a facade of like glorious economic success. I don't need to mention Parasite and Squid Game, but this is a very different work, but I think it's kind of like in that whole family of films dealing with contemporary life in Korea.
I'll shout out another film that premiered in Berlin within their Encounters section, which is Sho Miyake's Small, Slow, but Steady. This is ostensibly an adaptation of a memoir by a Japanese boxer who turned professional despite her difficulties with living with lifelong deafness, and Miyake transposes that story to the first year of the pandemic, on a young woman who is daylighting as a housekeeper in a hotel, and in her off time she's training to become a boxer under the mentorship of an older coach dealing with his own health issues. But it really it plays with our awareness of certain themes or tropes of sports dramas, also with some very familiar struggles of the pandemic, I think in really clever ways. But it's also very deliberately unconcerned with the heightened drama of a sports movie. I think especially with boxing itself, this is not at all a Rocky film. The sport, the pandemic, I think are more jumping off points for the director to work with, a number of ideas, but I think chiefly about language. I think particularly about various direct and visual like forms of communication, and how he uses film to take us into the main character's world, and her small intimate social network in Tokyo, which I'd say is a kind of Tokyo that we rarely see on screen. It's certainly portrayed in an unusual light here as a kind of a like scruffy, empty feeling. I think given the time the film was made, like during the pandemic, it's also, I think, beautifully shot on 16 millimeter, which adds its own kind of well-worn quality to everything and everyone in the film. So yeah, there's a clear interest in using the medium to draw on textures and create a really unique atmosphere. So yeah, I hope you'll check it out.
One of the biggest discoveries for me this year is this film called Father's Day from Rwanda. I mean, we don't often see many films from Africa. So when this film was screened in Berlin, I just said, we have to take a look at it. And we were all completely surprised by this work. kind of explores Rwandan society more than like 2.5 decades after the 90s genocide. The title of the film is a bit sarcastic. There isn't really a father to celebrate. The men in the film who are fathers are hardly role models. It feels like there is a pervasive spiritual vacuum, and women and children might be just better off being on their own. There is a meditative, spellbinding quality to the filmmaking. I remember that there are two scenes, conversations between women that are particularly intimate and magical, as we are just completely drawn into their mutual empathy and solidarity. Those are really magical moments that I often think that they're very special because there's no preparation or training that can help a filmmaker film magic. You know, things that it seems like something very interesting happen on screen. You don't exactly know why, but it really requires some kind of instinct from the filmmaker in order to capture that. So I really, really want everyone to go out and see this film.
Must see list, Laz must see.
And another film I want to highlight is this documentary called Blue Island from Hong Kong. It takes a hybrid approach to the documentary form. It combines like interviews, direct recording of events, archival footage, and reenactment to tell the very complex story of Hong Kong people's evolving identity over decades. From 1960s anti-colonial government protests, the influx of immigrants from mainland China during the Cultural Revolution, the overwhelming support for Tiananmen student demonstrators in 1989 to what we are more familiar with, the pro-democracy protests of 2019. What's really inventive and moving is that the film uses young activists of today to reenact the events that took place in the past, basically playing the activists of previous generations. To create this very fluid sense of dialogue and continuity. I think this is really a work of exceptional depth and insight. And I think anyone who's interested in knowing what's happening in Hong Kong, where it's going, really should look at this work because it tells you about its past and where it might be going in the future.
I agree. Yeah, really a very moving and timely film. So I guess all in all, this means buy your tickets fast because these films are obviously going to sell out. And, we're excited to welcome everybody back to MoMA. Last year, Film at Lincoln Center was our in-person venue as we were still gearing up to reopen to audiences, but both MoMA and Lincoln Center will be open and welcoming guests this year. And we're very, very excited to see you back in our theaters.
Yep, on Raj's note of seeing everything, I'd encourage everyone to look into our all access pass, especially if you're a student, which I think is really reasonably priced. Thanks everyone for listening. Thank you, La, thank you, Raj. And of course, a reminder, if you have more questions or want to know more about the lineup, you can visit our website at newdirectors.org for the schedule and for ticketing information.
Thanks,
See
Tyler.
you at the movies.
See you soon.